Your fun Fridays have probably gone by the wayside. You have too much to do, there's too much testing on your plate, and you don't have time to justify doing something fun in your classroom. I'm going to show you how to do a fun Friday in your classroom as we celebrate the end of our closed reading week, and you're not going to sacrifice any of the review that you wanted to do. We've been talking about adapting close reading to your younger students, and there's a whole playlist right here on YouTube. You can go back and watch all the videos about how to choose the right passages, what to do with vocabulary, what do you do for extra comprehension when you want to get into the really deep dive, the more than the surface of the reading passage. And that's all here on YouTube. It's a whole playlist. Or you can download the free guide to teaching close reading. The link is in the descriptions right below, and that's going to walk you through what a week of close reading looks like, and you'll have 2 weeks of close reading lessons and passages to practice. Now, at the end of your school week, you are too busy or you're under too much pressure to take a break. Now, we as teachers are kind of used to that pace, but our students are 6. If you teach first grade, you have little kiddos and they deserve a break. They've worked really hard and they do. They deserve to come to school and have fun. But we also want to bring closure to the end of our close reading and review what we've learned. So I'm going to show you how to combine those two things. So I'm going to give you some techniques to stay organized and to plan this, and then I'm going to give you some ideas. That way you can wrap up your close reading week and have some fun while you're doing it. It's really important to vary your activities at the end of the week, because even your best, most entertaining activities will become stale if you do them week after week. So I usually pick about 4 different types of activities, and I'm going to tell you what they are in this video, and then I recycle through them. I look at my reading passage and I decide what would be a good activity, and then I will make sure I do something different every 4 weeks, and then I can start over again. The first activity I have for you is to make a gigantic poster. Go down to your supply room, closet, the place where you keep the big butcher block paper on the rolls, and bring down the biggest piece of paper, the longest one you can find, and bring that down to your classroom and watch your students' eyes as they see how long it is. They're going to bug out. They're going to be excited. And what we're going to do with this is we're going to make a gigantic poster based on the reading passage and the topic, and everything we learned is going to go on that poster. This does take a little bit of planning. You're not going to want to give your students their crayons and have them go at it, because you do want to have some kind of format for your poster. I'm not saying you're telling them what to draw, but you are definitely creating some structure and a plan for your poster. The first thing you're going to want to do is make sure you reread your reading passage with your students. At this point, they've read it all week, so you can ask them to join you reading it with you, and they're going to be able to follow along. And then, ask them, what did we learn? Let's review. What were some of the important words we talked about? And that way you kind of have an idea of what you want to put on your poster. Some ideas are, if there's an element of sequencing in your passage, then you can draw 4 different sections and have each group of students draw beginning, middle, and, or first, next, then, and last. If you read a passage on community helpers, you can draw, different ones: teachers, firefighters, post office workers, librarians, police officers, and so on. A word about artwork: you're not showing them what to draw, but you can make the structure for them. So for our community helpers example, I would draw an outline of a body, and that way it's mostly for size. That way you don't get like teeny little firefighters this big. You're going to want it pretty big. And so that way you do the outline, but they're responsible for filling in the details. Same thing with sequencing. If you draw the boxes, and that way they know where to put their artwork, and instead of just trying to organize that on your own, you can help them with the organization. Before you start, you might want to draw the topic. If community helpers is your topic, you can draw that in bubble letters and your students can fill that in. Or if you have some speech bubbles, you can fill those in for your students, and then they can add in the text whatever you need to add extra. Use a permanent marker to do that, like a Sharpie, and then your students can go in with the crayons and do the rest. And they're going to love it. They're going to have so much fun, and they're still learning. You see how they're still taking what was in the text, and now they're making it into their own context to show someone else. You're always going to want to display anything you do in the hallway. I talk it up and I build a lot of hype about, those kindergarten kids down the hall are going to walk by and see this. And so they are going to be so excited when they come to first grade. And that way they think it's, they're very proud of their work and they know they're big kids. And so it just helps them a little bit. Another idea is to make a craft. I used to do at least a craft a week, especially when I first started teaching and I had all the time in the world to do that, and then it just got to be the point where I just maybe made gingerbread men around Christmas, the week of Christmas, and that's all I had time to do. And I really noticed my students' fine motor skills were suffering because they couldn't use scissors. They didn't know how to use liquid glue. All those little skills that, they aren't on my state standards or my core standards, but are important for me to teach them. So a craft would be a good thing to do, especially if it correlates to your reading passages. If you're reading about any kind of life cycle, the butterfly life cycle, make a butterfly out of pipe cleaners and tissue paper, and then you'll get extra bonus points if you also turn it into a writing activity. So you're doing a lot and they are learning a lot, but they're having a lot of fun doing it. So it's not just making a craft because it's a seasonal thing. It's really something that they are learning as they're doing it. And I guarantee when they take those butterflies home and they show their families, they're going to remember that a caterpillar eats all the leaves and builds a chrysalis and then emerges as a butterfly. They're going to remember it because we're actively involved in making one. So you can make a gigantic poster and put it out in the hallway, or you can make a smaller craft and set it home. You can also put those in the hallway if you want. But a third suggestion would be to do a science experiment. We also don't have time to teach science the way that, either we are told we have to, or we would like to. Obviously, we would like to touch on it more than we do, but we just simply don't have time. So if you have a nonfiction passage about a science topic, then you can do a science experiment for it. So I've used the example of an erosion close reading piece, and learning all the facts about erosion. You can take a tray and put some just some potting soil on it and have your students come up and take turns pouring, tilt it a little bit and have students take turns pouring water down to see what erosion actually looks like. Or if you're learning about how a seed grows, you can actually on that day, today we're going to plant our seeds, and to get a little Dixie cup and, you put the seed in there, or, it germinates better. I always put it in a Ziploc bag with a wet paper towel and I taped it to my window so it got plenty of sun. And then also you had that, condensation effect in there so they could learn about what that, the evaporation and the water cycle too. But that way, you could see the seed growing. And so you can do that because you are looking at what you learned from your close reading passages, you're reviewing it, and then you are seeing it as a real world example. And so that's a really good idea to make it still really fun. They're going to love it, and also they're going to remember it a little bit better than if you just gave them a worksheet about it. Now, if you're short on time, or if you have a 4-day week, or things happen, you get interrupted a million times, you don't get to it. Another good example is to just pull up YouTube, and you're not going to want to watch a whole movie, unless it's short. And always preview it first, because you always want to make sure you know what you're showing your students. But there are lots of little short videos based on the topic of your reading passage. So maybe in the fall, you're going to want to pull up something about Johnny Appleseed if you read a Johnny Appleseed passage, and you don't even have to show the whole thing. If you're short on time, just pull about 5 minutes. I would really recommend any of these activities saving until you have done all of your work on the passage, because you want your students to learn from the reading passage, and you want them to apply what they learned and do the activity on Fridays. And that way you're not giving them away anything. You're not spilling what the secrets of the topic. You are having them learn it and decide what to do, and then you are showing them a real world example. So make sure you do all this at the end of the week. These 4 different types of activities can be recycled and used, every 4 weeks. And so that way it is just, reminding your students that, that they don't know what to expect. And it'll be a fun way to kind of mix and match the activities you're doing to review their close reading passages. We talked a lot about hype when we are talking about close reading. Make sure you're still building that hype for the next week. So after every day you have worked on close reading, make sure you build that hype for the next day, and guess what we're doing tomorrow. And you really want them to get excited to learn more. Now you can send their reading passages home with any artwork they have, or any activities that they've done, but build hype for next week, especially if they found this one fun. All right, if you think this one was fun, you just wait until next week. You see how that's going to be like, yeah, all right, this was a lot of fun, and what are we doing next week? And that way you know that they are going to want to come back and be excited for close reading. So we've had the fun. We have made a gigantic poster, we've made crafts, we've done science experiments, we've even watched YouTube. But do you see how we still reviewed what we were learning from the close reading passages? And it's not just a worksheet. So I want you to really take time when you're doing your close read to not skip the last day, because it's going to really tie everything in together. And when your students are having fun, they're going to remember what you taught them. Let's review those activities to apply what they learned and make something their own. You could do a craft, you could do a science experiment, you could watch a short YouTube video, or you can make a gigantic classroom poster. Make sure you do this though, because you'll be bringing closure and you'll be building hype for next week. And you've met your goal of showing your students that when they read, they are learning something, and then they are showing us what they learned by applying it to something new. If this was helpful for you, make sure you click like so YouTube does its thing and shows it to more teachers. Also, make sure you subscribe to this channel, because the next video we're doing is all about close reading supplies. You probably already have a lot of these on hand, but I'm going to go over them and show you how to organize them so that way they are right at your fingertips when you're ready to teach close reading. So I'll see you then.